Joining us now, former U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, Joe DeGenever, and the author of the bestseller, Trumped Up, How the Criminalization of Political Differences Endangers Democracy. There's some important things. Joe, I want to start with you tonight, not the least of which I think we've got to go to the dossier issue, in large part because when you look at the dossier, what do we see? He's saying to George Stephanopoulos, it's still unverified. And yet Andrew McCabe is on record saying, oh, without the dossier, no warrant. And we also know that the dossier made up the bulk of the application, according to the Grassley-Graham memo. So he's saying they never corroborated it, and they brought that before a FISA court judge in an application. What does that say to you?
This tortured and troubled man who you saw last night on television, America's dirty cop, has destroyed the integrity, the reputation, and the legitimacy of the Federal Bureau of Investigation single-handedly by his outrageous performance last night on ABC. It is inconceivable to me that anyone can now think that he performed a legitimate law enforcement function during the investigation of Hillary Clinton. And it is quite obvious that the dossier was a fake document, that it was absolutely purposely used illegally by senior officials of the FBI and the Department of Justice. Mr. Comey lied repeatedly last night, and regrettably, he lied to the FISA court. He encouraged others to lie to the FISA court. And regrettably, I think Mr. Comey has to be charged with crimes for falsely presenting information to a FISA court and for apparently lying regularly to Congress.
Alan Dershowitz, Professor, I know you don't like criminalization of political differences. No. By the way, I share that. And it's gotten as worse as it's ever been. But if you're going to go to a FISA court to spy on an opposition party campaign in an election year, and you're going to use unverified, uncorroborated documents that were bought and paid for by one campaign against the other, and a foreign national using Russian sources of all things to get it, is that a crime in Alan Dershowitz's book?
Well, first of all, Sean, I do want to say that I really think that you should have disclosed your relationship with Cohen when you talked about him on this show. You could have said just that you had asked him for advice or whatever, but I think it would have been much, much better had you disclosed that relationship. You were in a difficult situation,
If you understand the nature of it, Professor, I'm going to deal with this later in the show.
No, I understand.
It was minimal. I put out a statement about it.
You should have said that, and that would have been fair to say that it was minimal.
That's fine.
You were in a tough position because, A, you had to talk about Cohen, and B, you didn't want the fact that you had spoken to him to be revealed. And you had the right, by the way, not to have your identity revealed.
I have the right to privacy.
Right.
I do.
But, you know, it's a complex situation when you're speaking to millions of people.
Professor, it was such a minor relationship in terms of, and it had to do with real estate and nothing political?
I understand that. I understand that. As far as Comey is concerned, look, I don't want to charge Comey with crime. I agree with Comey when he said that he doesn't think that Trump should be impeached. We should leave it to the public. We should leave it to the public to decide whether to read his book, whether to be critical of him, and the public can judge. I don't like trying to turn everything into crimes. You can make crimes out of almost anything. If you take any complicated issue,
but Professor, I don't want to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Professor, if you went into court and you brought information and you presented it to a judge, and you never verified that information as being true, and it's to get a warrant to spy on an American citizen, you better damn well know whether or not that information is accurate and disclose to the judge that it is a political document and tell exactly who you know paid for it.
I agree with that, and I do agree, too, that he said on television yesterday that even today he doesn't have confidence in it. And yet to seek a warrant based on something that even after months, you don't have confidence in raises serious questions. But as an experienced criminal lawyer, and I think Joe would probably back me up on this, applications for warrants are often pretty sloppy, and they don't always have everything tied down. Well, they use gossip and rumors sometimes. It shouldn't happen. As a civil libertarian, I'm opposed to that.
I agree that the warrant process can sometimes be imperfect, but let me just say this about James Comey and this particular warrant. let us remember that James Comey's job was to charge people with crimes after he investigated them and recommend that they be prosecuted. What he did in this particular case was knowingly and willfully abuse the criminal process against an American citizen, and he did so purposely to influence a presidential campaign. Now, you know what? I would never have charged Hillary Clinton with anything beyond a misdemeanor in her case. And if they had been smart, what they would have done was negotiated a deal with her. We'll give you a misdemeanor. You don't lose your civil rights. You continue to run for president.
Hey, Joe, wait a minute, though.
Everybody would have understood.
If I deleted 33,000 subpoenaed emails and I acid washed my hard drive and I beat up devices, again, for subpoenaed material, am I going to get a misdemeanor?
My point is very simple. James Comey drove the criminal process against some people like General Flynn and Manafort and took it away from other people like Hillary Clinton. You know what? James Comey's a criminal, and he should be charged.
Look, every civil libertarian should be concerned about...
That's not equal justice.
Right. Every civil libertarian should be concerned about selective justice. We have laws that are so broad, and they apply. On a show just before, we were talking about the former governor of Illinois gets 14 years in prison for what people do every single day in state legislatures all over the country. And yet we prosecute him and throw the book at him. We just have to have a single standard of justice for Republicans, for Democrats alike.
That's right. And Mr. Comey needs to have it applied to him.
All right, we have a lot more to get into tonight. Newt Gingrich will join us next. Also, I will react to the media hysteria today about yours truly, and I will give you the truth on that straight ahead.